It's incredible. I mean, the way he played his first Grand Slam match against his first top 10, it's unbelievable. The way he approached the match, the way he handled everything, the nerves, the match in general it's been fantastic. So it's someone that I had to be care of, let's say. So I had to see him. He's gonna be there. It's just the beginning of the year, just one win in Grand Slam, but he's gonna be there. So we are gonna put Joao Fonseca's names on the list of the best players in the world really soon.
The tennis world is buzzing because teenage prodigy Joao Fonseca is widely hailed as the next challenger to the Carlos Alcaraz / Jannik Sinner duopoly. Fonseca even received mind-blowing brutal praise directly from the world #1, Alcaraz. The Brazilian responded with utter humility, citing Alcaraz as a mentor. But now, that sweet respect is probably curdling into instant dread. Why? Because the tennis gods have scheduled their first ever meeting, and that initial quote of admiration is about to look incredibly awkward. Do you think it is possible to respect your opponent too much right before you have to face them on the court? Give me your unvarnished thoughts below. Here we go, back to the pathetic spectacle of a tennis prodigy sabotaging his own career narrative with good manners. The tennis world, as we know, has been experiencing a serious, almost medically concerning case of duopoly fever. For what feels like an eternity, but is actually the last 8 Grand Slam tournaments, the entire men's game has been controlled by a very small, very elite, and frankly, very boring club of 2, Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. They've taken turns winning everything shiny, leaving the rest of the tour to scavenge for scraps and occasionally reach a quarterfinal. This situation is unsustainable for drama. The fans, the sponsors, the television executives, everyone needs a third guy, a disruptor, a fresh face to finally form the so-called new big 3 and save us from endless replays of Spanish drop shots meeting Italian backhands. Into this vacuum steps the 19-year-old Brazilian sensation, Joao Fonseca. Now, Fonseca is clearly talented. He has the raw, unpolished power that makes coaches weak in the knees. He just wrapped up his first full year on the senior tour with 2 ATP titles, including one in Basel, a nice indoor hardcourt swing, which, let's be honest, is not supposed to be the natural habitat of a young South American player. He finished the year ranked inside the top 25. He has been hailed as the legitimate, honest-to-goodness next big threat to the two-headed monster at the top. The hype is massive, the future is supposed to be bright, and his forehand is so powerful it practically registers on the Richter scale. Everything was perfect for his coronation as the new competitive menace. And then, he opened his mouth. Actually, scratch that. Before Fonseca opened his mouth, Carlos Alcaraz got there first, in a moment of pure, blinding generosity that will inevitably come back to haunt Fonseca like a recurring nightmare.
We've seen some teenagers here have some success. Fonseca, Mensik, and last night team all beat top 10 players. I'm wondering what advice, I guess, have you seen those guys? What are your impressions of those 3? And what advice would you give someone about breaking through at such a young age at this level?
Well, I'm going to start with the second one, the second question. I've seen those players. I've seen the level that they have. I didn't watch too much about Team, for example, but I watched a little bit last night, and it was incredible. I was surprised a little bit about his level. I don't know. Which ranking they are gonna reach, they're gonna get. But they have a lot of potential. I mean, I'm talking like I am 30 years old. So, and I'm just 2 years older than them. So, what advice? Not beat me, I guess.
Alcaraz, the world #1, the man Fonseca is meant to dethrone by 2026, decided to deliver the most flattering, most detailed, and most psychologically crippling compliment a rival could ever receive. He called Fonseca a special and incredible player. Not only that, he pointed to the Brazilian's insane power and specifically praised his serve, admitting that he struggled with that shot when he entered the tour. And then came the ultimate kiss of death. Alcaraz said Fonseca has a brutal forehand.
He's from the tennis club in Ipanema, where my son practices.
Just think about that for a second. The undisputed king of the current men's game, the reigning champion of most everything that matters, tells the world that the aspiring challenger has a weapon that is better than almost everyone else's. That is the tennis equivalent of being knighted. It is an impossible gift, a validation that should have made Fonseca walk a little taller and maybe, just maybe, develop a healthy, arrogant chip on his shoulder. But no, Fonseca's reaction was not one of newly energized confidence, but of utterly pathetic, wide-eyed adoration. When told about the world number, one's assessment, the young man practically melted into a puddle of humility. He responded with comments that should be stapled to the wall of every high-performance coach as an example of what not to say before facing a top opponent. Fonseca described the compliment as really important and something that helps him stay motivated and believe in himself. It gets worse. He went on to describe his precious, really valuable experience of watching Alcaraz practice at Wimbledon. He talked about how much he learned just by observing how the world number one prepares, how he works, how he handles himself. He called Alcaraz so important to our sport and said that sharing those moments with him was significant for my learning experience. He essentially told the world, I am a student of Carlos Alcaraz, and he is my guiding light. This is not a competitive mindset. This is the script of a respectful documentary narrated by an adoring apprentice, not the soundbite of a rival preparing to rip the world number. One's throat out in a third-set tiebreaker. Alcaraz is not just his opponent. He's his mentor. He's his inspiration. He's the guy Fonseca models his process after. How exactly are you supposed to conjure the necessary aggression to challenge someone when your internal monologue is just a loop of, thank you, world number one, for all your guidance? The professional blunder here is not just in being polite, it's in giving Alcaraz a free, priceless psychological advantage. Alcaraz now knows, without a shred of doubt, that his young opponent is entering their first ever clash at the Miami Invitational with a heavy dose of reverence. Fonseca isn't just focused on winning, he's focused on learning and applying the lessons taught by the man across the net. This translates directly to hesitation, a lack of killer instinct at crucial moments, and a psychological inability to truly go for the jugular against his idol. It's a tragic comedy, really. The entire tennis world, including esteemed figures like Tony Nadal, is banking on Fonseca. Tony Nadal recently weighed in on the duopoly, stating matter-of-factly that Alcaraz and Sinner don't have rivals yet, but if anyone is going to emerge to push them a bit, Fonseca is right there at the top of the list. Tony Nadal wants a fierce, fearless competitor to push the leaders. What he got instead was a highly respectful, appreciative young man who just finished submitting a term paper on the virtues of Carlos Alcaraz's training routine. This is why you can't have nice things in professional sports. Respect is a sign of weakness in this arena. And let's not forget the thinly veiled critique that came with Alcaraz's praise. While he gushed over the brutal forehand and power, Alcaraz couldn't help but play the role of the experienced sensei, offering a constructive and, frankly, very specific piece of criticism. He said that if he had to point out something for Fonseca to improve, it would be his mobility. He even gave him a little lecture on the difference between reaching a high level and maintaining it, which is something very different. Alcaraz knows exactly what he's doing. He's praising Fonseca enough to boost his confidence, but simultaneously reminding him that the path to the top is long and he still has glaring weaknesses. Now, because of Fonseca's earlier comments, we know he took this critique to heart. He essentially validated the world #1's tactical assessment of his game. Alcaraz is walking into the Miami Invitational exhibition, knowing precisely the weakness he needs to exploit, Fonseca's movement, and knowing that Fonseca respects his judgment enough to believe the criticism is accurate. It's a genius move by Alcaraz, whether intentional or not. He's identified the flaw, and the victim of the flaw has publicly thanked him for the identification. The upcoming match at the Miami Invitational, staged dramatically at the home of the Miami Marlins, is supposed to be the spectacular, high-stakes kickoff of a new rivalry. For Alcaraz, it's just a fun exhibition, part of a quick US swing after yet another successful season that saw him claim 6 majors and finish the year at world #1. For Fonseca, however, this match is supposed to be his coming-out party. It's the moment the student is meant to show the master that he has learned enough to challenge for the throne. It's an opportunity to prove the Tony Nadals of the world right and secure the narrative of the next big three for the 2026 season. Instead, every single media mention leading up to the December 8th clash is focused on how much Fonseca admires the man he is supposed to be destroying. The whole thing feels less like a rivalry preview and more like a very polite apprenticeship showcase. How is Fonseca supposed to generate the necessary competitive heat? Is he going to pause between points to tell Alcaraz how valuable his presence is to the sport? Is he going to thank Alcaraz for his advice on improving mobility after being passed at the net? The dramatic tension is being completely undermined by the two men's shared mutual respect. This is a failure of basic sports psychology. The greatest rivalries, Borg-McEnroe, Sampras-Agassi, Nadal-Djokovic, were fueled by competitive friction, not mutual respect. The competitive fire comes from a refusal to acknowledge the opponent's superiority. Fonseca has not just acknowledged Alcaraz's superiority, he has written a glowing fan letter about it. And now, when the pressure mounts, when the score is tied in a third-set tiebreaker, and he has to choose between playing safe or going for the heroic, risky winner, that voice of the world #1, the one praising his power but critiquing his movement, is going to be ringing loudly in his ears. That is the moment the regret will hit. The realization that his heartfelt admiration has created a mental chokehold he can't escape. Fonseca should have played it cool. He should have offered a non-committal. Alcaraz is a great player, but my focus is only on what I'm doing. He should have channeled the subtle menace of Sinner, who doesn't praise his rivals so much as simply beats them. Instead, he painted himself into a corner of deferential admiration. Alcaraz, on the other hand, is an absolute genius in this exchange. He gave a massive compliment that cost him nothing, boosted his image as a generous champion, and simultaneously delivered a psychological body blow. Now he gets to step onto the court against an opponent who, deep down, is rooting for him just as much as he is rooting for himself. That's a competitive checkmate before the first ball has been served. The potential for this match to be an embarrassing, one-sided lesson is high. If Fonseca gets blown off the court, every analyst will have the perfect ready-made excuse. He wasn't ready to face his idol. He was too respectful. The brutal forehand was still too hesitant to truly betray the mentor. It's an indictment on his maturity, not his talent. If he had come out with a swagger, dismissive of the compliments, the loss would have simply been due to a difference in skill. But a loss now will be seen as a devastating failure of competitive will, a direct consequence of his inability to be strategically impolite. We needed a rival. We got a very sweet, very promising young man who is still too busy taking notes from the current king to actually challenge him. The next big three will have to wait. Perhaps until Fonseca learns that sometimes, to dethrone a champion, you have to temporarily forget that they are also your hero. He needs to find the competitive cruelty that will allow him to hit that brutal forehand directly at the world #1 without flinching. His current mental state, however, seems more geared towards getting an autograph than getting a victory. And that, in a competitive sense, is instant, searing regret. The entire tennis world is waiting to see if he can mentally overcome the praise he so gratefully accepted. So, the stage is set for a friendly but fierce showdown where every point will be scored by the awkward ghost of compliments past. Joao Fonseca needs to forget everything Carlos Alcaraz ever taught him or said about him to even stand a chance. This match will tell us if the next generation can be ruthless enough to take the throne, or if they're still too polite. The only thing certain is that Fonseca will regret being so honest. Let me know if you think Fonseca can overcome his own fanboy moment to win this match. And please, like this video and subscribe for more updates on all the brutally polite drama in the tennis world.